You want to get into hunting or target shooting but aren't sure where to start? Sit back today, we're going to talk through a couple of different options starting at $350 and going all the way up to $4,000. Welcome YouTube, Stein from Montana Man channel here. Today we are going to jump in and talk about sporting and hunting rifles. Anybody going out to buy a rifle these days faces literally hundreds of different options. Sometimes it can be a little bit of a challenge to figure out what's going to be the best option for your particular need. So we're basically going to go through 4 different options that I see as probably your best bet for either a hunting rifle or a sporting rifle, something you're going to take to the range, poke some holes in paper, or go out and shoot some pop cans or gophers or whatever suits your needs there. I think as we get started here, one of the things that's really key is to understand what you're wanting the rifle to do from the beginning. Are you going to use it for hunting? Are you going to use it for sporting events? Or do you want to get really competitive in the world of rifle shooting and shoot things out to 1,000 meters with as much accuracy and precision as you can get? So some of the first questions to ask before you bust out the checkbook is, what kind of budget do you have to work with? It's key to look at not only how much do you have on hand now, but how much do you have over time. So one of the options we're going to discuss is buying a solid platform and then adding to that as time goes on. So the top rifle here, you'll see I purchased that as a bare bones rifle and then added a lot to it over time, basically tripling it in value. So is that an option for you or not? Again, are you going to use it for hunting, sporting, or do you want something that works kind of good in both of those scenarios? And then finally, basically the cool factor. Do you really like certain brands? Did you grow up shooting a particular rifle and it just really feels natural and right to have that rifle in your hands? What level of quality do you look for? Are you looking for just a basic rifle that launches a piece of lead at something? Or do you really value the form and function beyond what is really necessary to get the job done? So the first option we're going to talk about today is basically your $350 option. So this rifle right here is what we're looking at. This happens to be a Savage Axis. It's my daughter's rifle. We picked it up at Cabela's, minus that particular scope. It did have a cheapy 3x9 that we replaced with this little bit nicer kind of low-end Vortex scope. But if you're looking for basically something just to get yourself into hunting or target shooting, get the job done, for a very, very reasonable price. Basically you're looking at something, I want to hit a paper plate at 200 yards. This is going to be one of the options available to you. So for about $350, you can get into a scope rifle combination. They're available in most of the caliber selections that you could want. This would be a good option for someone that doesn't plan on getting into, the high accuracy, long range shooting. Really doesn't want to tinker with something over time. One of the drawbacks of these particular rifles is that the aftermarket manufacturers don't make a lot of components for these rifles. At $350, the person that buys that is really not looking at improving that over time. So basically what you see there is what you're going to get, and the idea is that's the kind of rifle that you're going to want. It's also good for someone that really values the form and function and durability, over the look and feel of this gun. If it's something, say you're a blacktail hunter in Western Washington and you're busting through thick brush on a regular basis, and really your shots are going to be in the, say, 40 to 120 yards, and you want something that you can sort of hammer on, it's going to be out in the rain all the time, this is going to be a great choice. If something happens to it, you drop it in the river, whatever, you're not out a lot of money. Basically maybe you only have $350, $400 budget. That's, all you can afford, and you want to get into hunting, you want to get into shooting, it's a great option for you. And finally, which is the reason I actually purchased this particular rifle, is that it's a first rifle for my daughter. We bought this for her for Christmas 2 years ago, and it's likely that she's going to, outgrow that over time. And I know from firsthand experience, since I was a kid at one time, that this rifle is probably going to get dropped, scratched, thrown in the back of the truck, all the things that kids like to do with our stuff when we buy it for them, basically because they don't know any better. So, in my mind, that's a perfect rifle. It does the job. It's relatively weatherproof, and if something bad happens to it, I'm not out thousands of dollars. So as I said, Savage Axis, that's a great option. A couple of other options that are basically, on par are the Remington American and the Marlin X7. All three of those rifles are right at the same price point, available in the same caliber. I don't really have a preference one way or another. This particular rifle, they had it in the youth model with the shorter stock in the .243 Winchester caliber I wanted, so I went and picked it up. It's a great little rifle. It does the job just fine. I did happen to have this scope out there. It's about a $200 scope. It's, as far as scopes go, if you've priced them, that's basically an entry level as far as a quality scope. This scope used to be on my Remington rifle before I upgraded it. It's a really, really nice scope for $200. You're not going to compare it to a $4,000 scope, obviously, but for $200, you're greatly going to improve the sight picture and the performance of it. It won't fog up. I've ran that in the rain and the snow, and it's just a great little scope for that. So basically, we're in that. It's about $550. Give or take, with a nicer scope. So that's kind of your option 1+ there, is to put a little nicer scope on it. Again, the major pros are, it's an affordable rifle. You're going to shoot probably a minute and a half or 2 minutes with the rifle out of the box. Roughly that's somewhere between a 1 and 2 inch group at 100 yards. Very capable for taking, deer out to 200 yards. And, basically for $350, you get out in the field and you can enjoy some of this hunting that we all do. Kind of the cons, one of the big drawbacks, as we talked about it a little bit, is there's not a lot of aftermarket parts. If you want to upgrade the trigger or the stock, you're really going to have a hard time finding those, just because, number one, it's a relatively new rifle. Number two, there's just not a lot of market for people buying a budget rifle and then tinkering with it. You're much better off starting with a little bit nicer of a platform and going from there. Okay, so option number 2, say you want to shoot accurately, inch or two at 100 yards. You want to go for some longer shots. You expect to be hunting, 2 to 3, maybe 350 yards, antelope hunting or something like that. Maybe you have a little bit more of a budget to work with and you want to buy something once instead of buying it and then several years down the road, wanting something else and having to sell it and buy a new rifle at that time. Or, maybe you just like the form factor, the feel a little bit better. Obviously, on a bolt rifle, the action's going to be much smoother on a little bit nicer of a rifle. These actions, they get the bullet in, they get the bullet out, but you don't really feel like that's a, finely tuned machine that you're working with. So in that case, what you're looking at back here, if you were to buy this rifle stock, which is what I did, I picked that up for $450. It was a little bit of a sweetheart deal at the time because this store, if you live in the Northwest, you may remember G.I. Joe's. They were ran into the ground, unfortunately. It was a great store. Spent a lot of money there over the years. But nonetheless, they got a new CEO who trashed the company, went bankrupt. So I was able to actually pick up one of their excess stocks that a company was selling that picked up their merchandise when they went out of business. So I picked up this Remington 700 in stainless. It had a black plastic stock on it, and it had a real cheapo 3x9 scope. And again, a fully functional rifle. The actions was pretty smooth on it. Remington 700s have been around for a long time. Something like 5 or 6 million of them have been made. So that's what I went with. And really, I was only into it about $100 more than something like this. So in terms of value, you're getting a much nicer operating weapon than you would with one of your lower end rifles like this. For $100 more, you're getting a better platform that you can build on over time, as you can see. But basically, $450 out of the box. You're going to shoot minute and a half, maybe if you're lucky. Trigger's not going to be fantastic, but it's going to be workable. The action's going to be really nice. You're going to get a nice barrel on there, a stock that's workable, and a scope that will basically, get the job done for the time being. Basically, the pros on that, it's going to afford you a lot more upgrading possibilities if you choose the right platform. And again, I mentioned that's a Remington 700. Some of the other options in that same price range, you can get the Howell rifles. Thompson Contender makes a nice rifle. Weatherby, Mossberg, Winchester, Browning, Stevens, Tikka. All of your major manufacturers are going to produce a rifle, in the $400 to $500 range. For most of those, you can get them as a combo with a scope on it for basically the same price, or maybe a couple bucks more, and you jump into the woods with that, and it will suit you just fine. Your third option that I want to get into is basically the rifle that you're seeing here. You're going to start with a trusted platform where a lot of manufacturers make aftermarket components, and over time you're going to build that up. So basically your first option, you're going to be somewhere in the $350 to $550 range, depending on if you want to upgrade the scope. Your second option would be the stock Remington 700. Going to put you about in the $450 range, and then your third option is basically improving that stock Remington rifle. So this is really good for someone like myself that just enjoys going out at the range and likes to shoot groups under an inch. Test your skills and improve them over time. You want to have a rifle that's capable of taking effective shots beyond 300 yards. If you want to plunk an antelope at 350 or 400 yards, you're going to put a little money into your rifle to really be sure of that shot. I really enjoy working on things. I'm kind of mechanical in nature. I like tinkering with machines and firearms, adding the things on myself, lapping the scope rings, doing all those type of things. I find a lot of pride and ownership and pride in doing it myself. Certainly value fit and finish. The rifle feels really solid in my hands, and it's basically built to my specifications. And a rifle like that's something that I could never outgrow. I could certainly improve it beyond where it is right now. I can send it in for custom gunsmithing. Basically any gunsmith probably in the world knows how to work on a Remington 700. And I just didn't have the budget for a custom rifle. I didn't have $3,000 or $4,000 to pay someone to produce a rifle to my specifications. So what you're seeing there, as I mentioned, it's starting with a $450 rifle. I converted it to a box magazine, put a new stock on it. As you can tell, it's a Bell & Carlson Alaskan II stock. Upgraded the trigger. Basically, a little tip for you. If you want to shoot better groups with a stock rifle, the first thing I would do, even before I touch the scope, would be to put a new trigger on it. If you're shooting an 8 or even a heavier pound trigger than that, you're going to have a really hard time holding those crosshairs on the target as you pull the trigger. So getting that down into the 3 or 4 pound range is going to tighten up your groups, basically guaranteed. So triggers are a great way to go. As you can tell, I put a Vortex scope on there with some one-piece rings. Also have, in front here you can see a bubble cant. Helps me at the range, not so much hunting. I don't use it too much, but at the range it helps me keep the gun absolutely vertical. Also have the cheek rest here. Allows me to get a much better cheek weld so that I can get a consistent picture through the scope. And then the caps and the sling. Basically you're looking at a $1,500 rifle as it sits there. So, depending on where you're at, that could be a lot of money or that could be really doable. For me, it happened to be kind of in the lot of money range, which is why I took and bought the rifle and hunted with that for a little while and then upgraded it slowly over time. As I mentioned, the first thing I did was put the trigger into it, and that made it a fabulous rifle. And then second thing I did was put this scope on it there, and then upgraded the stock and some of those other things. Basically just saved up money over time and bought it as I could afford it and put it on there. So it was a multi-year project to get it where it is, but I'm really happy with the way it is. It was designed as an elk rifle. Also use it for deer, antelope, bear, basically anything else. If I happen to draw, a moose tag or a mountain goat or something like that, it'll work fine. I can confidently shoot that rifle out to, pretty much 400 yards on a calmer day. So basically that's several of the options that I think you should consider there. The final option would be, if you have a big checkbook and you don't want to tinker with anything, you can absolutely buy a custom rifle. You can get a specialty rifle. They make a lot of really nice lightweight rifles these days, mountain rifles, but you're going to pay for that. The Weatherby Mark V, for example, lightweight rifle is going to come in $1,800 just bare. So it's going to be more expensive than this rifle, and that's before you start putting rings and scopes and slings and everything else on it. You can get a really nice custom rifle, something like a Carolina Custom. They start about $4,000 built to order. Again, that's before you put a scope on it. So if you have the checks to write, those are fabulous options for you. They're going to be really heirloom quality, well built, hand machined down to your tolerances and what you're looking for. So if you have $4,000 to write a check for a rifle, that's something you can look into. But I think most of us are going to go, something along these lines. And I think these two platforms here are really representative of, the average guy and what he's going to go out and do with a rifle. So, basically it's sort of like the, the Ford Taurus or the Ford Mustang, if you want to keep it in that comparison. If you want something that just gets you from point A to point B, great option here. You can put a nice scope on it. It'll be a rifle, it'll serve you well. You'll hand it down. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. If you like tinkering with things, you want a little bit more performance. You want to shoot it further. You want a little bit, more of a weatherproof platform. You can see it's in the stainless steel. Something like that works great. It's not a heavy rifle. It comes in at about 8.5 pounds with the scope and the ammunition in it. So, perfectly fine for backpacking type of trips. So. Again, I think that's several of your options you want to look at. I didn't go into a lot of detail on this particular rifle. If anybody's interested, I could do a full review on either of these rifles or any of the components. I use a lot of Vortex optics. I also have some binoculars and rangefinders and stuff like that from those guys. Or I can go into some of the caliber selection. This particular rifle is in .243 Winchester. This one's chambered in .30-06 Springfield. There's a very specific reason why I chose both of those. So if you're interested in finding out my thoughts on caliber selection, or want a more in-depth detail on any of these rifles, drop me a message or put some comments below. But other than that, go out, get yourself a rifle, start improving your shots, take it out, get out in the great outdoors. This is some of the best time in modern history to be hunting. Most of your herds are coming up. It's affordable, it's fun. You take your whole family out and do it. So don't use any excuse that you don't know what kind of rifle to buy. Pick up any of these things that we talked about today and they'll serve you fine. So with that being said, if you enjoyed it, please subscribe below. Drop some comments, let me know what else you want to hear about. And other than that, we'll be signing off today. Stein from Montana Man Channel. Take care, shoot straight.